Roni, here is your reminder. Clean the cat. Roni, here is your reminder. Clean the cat.
He's amazing.
Roni, you got me setting off for something new. And here I am again. Like, I don't even want to turn it down. I don't even want to turn it down. Like, no, that's a whole vibe. And for anyone that don't know, it's actually called Singing Guitar Vibes. Welcome to tonight's episode, our last Black August conversation. We're going to talk about fight. Every Friday this month, we've had a different pillar we've talked about: study, train, fast. We're up to fight, which is super important. And I'm honored and pleased to have Roni Minter with us this evening. Roni, thank you for being here. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So and Roni knows a lot about the fight. Y'all gonna hear about it. You're gonna learn about it. There's plenty to talk about. For those that may not know, Black August was started back in the 1970s by incarcerated Black men who were literally fighting for their freedom. The thing that gets left out of the conversation too often, especially these days and historically, is the fight for freedom and liberation of incarcerated Black women. And if we're going to start this conversation today, I think that's where we need to start it from. So, Roni, if you could speak to folks from your personal experience, what you've seen, what you've lived about the fight for Black women trying to get out of chains and cages, let the folks know, like, what's that about? Because we don't hear it enough.
Again, thank you for having me, Jamaica. But I think if we are to tell the truth about this history, we have to also speak the names of women who carried the weight of that struggle in their own bodies. Women like Assata Shakur, um, Angela Davis, and Marilyn Buck, who wasn't Black, but she was definitely a woman in the fight. Um, their resistance was not just political, but personal and rooted in the fight to survive in spaces designed to break all of us who have been in those spaces. Um, Funny is, I actually, while I was in federal prison, Marilyn Buck was my bunkie. And this was before I even had any notions of being an advocate about anything. I was very young, but the things that she and I talked about late at night still resonated with me. So when I made this transition in my life, I drew on a lot of those conversations that I had with her. Um, I'm formerly incarcerated, about 18 years stretch of in and out of prison. 18 years I did in prison though, but it wasn't a straight 18, like 5 here, this year. So I understand fully what it feels like to be in spaces, especially as a black person in a very racist system, and having to constantly look over my shoulder, especially as it was getting close time for me to come home. It's almost like they did anything. When I mean they, I meant the correctional officers would do anything to stop someone from being released. And so it became, out of all the time that you do in there, the closer you get to home becomes the most frightening time of that incarceration. And so I think while I was still young and still involved in the culture of addiction, I didn't really grasp um, just how much freedom really means. And it wasn't until I broke those chains and became unshackled, so to speak, mentally, that I was able to understand what I was living through, what everyone else was living through, and what drove my decision to join the fight for incarcerated women and men, and through the work that we do.
It has been amazing. I've known you for some years now, and one of the things that has always struck me personally is your relentless, your resilience, the fact that you just keep fighting, and that we're at a point where a lot of us, and I watch you. I've seen you recently say, I mean, I'm paraphrasing. I'm done with this shit. Like I'm done, right? Because we're still fighting for freedom. We're still fighting for liberation. We're still fighting for justice, especially Black folks. And we also recognize that other marginalized groups are going through the same stuff. And while there's this history of fighting for Black liberation, and I've said it every single week, Black folks have been fighting since 1619. We weren't ever okay. Um, I want to bring it more local this week, right? Because we study, we train, we fast, we prepare ourselves, but we're preparing ourselves for a fight. What are the fights that are happening right now in the capital region? Can you speak to folks about, I mean, one thing in particular, like what's happening when we're talking about the fight for freedom and justice and liberation?
Well, the fight that I don't even know how it really fell in our laps as Freedom of Shackle as an organization. But we started receiving calls in January from family members of people who are incarcerated at Albany County Correctional Facility. Um, just a little history on this though is that there's been this long-standing fight down in the city of closed Rikers, and I've been against the closed Rikers campaign because I've never felt like it was the actual facility. I've always felt it was the culture of the correction. So you could close Rikers Island and you can move them to another facility in another borough or wherever, but you're going to take the same correctional officers, the same culture. And so while I'm going to speak to Albany County Correctional Facility right now, I need to just know that this stuff is happening in Suffolk County Jail, Nassau County Jail, Rensselaer County Jail, Monroe County Jail. It's happening all over the state, all over the country, in these city and county jails. The culture of the corrections is the problem. This culture dates back to the time of the enslaved individual, where then you had overseers, now you have correctional officers. So this is the culture, this is the mindset. And even when you have Black or Latino officers who work in facilities, they oftentimes get it confused and forget where they come from, and they become part of that culture. So, we are talking about a deep rooted culture that needs to be uprooted and reimagined. We have to. I'm also not one for the abolish. I'm for reimagining what corrections looks like, because honestly, there's sometimes when people do things that, you know, they might need to be removed from society for a period of time. I don't believe in long, these life sentences and all that, because what does that really serve the community? But I think corrections needs to be reimagined and what that can really look like. So when we're talking about Albany County Correctional Facility in particular, we're talking about a Superintendent Michael Lyons, who, for all accounts, is just a blatant racist. And I don't care how many Black people align themselves with him. And I've heard a common council member identify him as my brother, who he's Black, and all this. That man is a racist. And then we have Sheriff Apple, who is sitting back, allowing this racist to oversee that facility and allow these officers to run around that facility as if they're the Proud Boys. We are hearing weekly, multiple accounts of violence against bodies in that facility. As an incarcerated person who had the unfortunate time to be in Albany County Jail, I actually saw some of that violence myself. I watched them beat women who were on the floor, cuffed. While cuffed, they would pepper spray them and then continuously kicking them. It just so happened that a report came out, I believe it was yesterday, from the Times Union, of an officer who was arrested, only received a misdemeanor. And that's another conversation, because he was kicking someone in the head. I mean, can you just imagine being kicked in the head repeatedly while cuffed? While handcuffed, you're being kicked in the head, and he only received a misdemeanor for that. So where there's smoke, there's fire, right? And the sheriff has repeatedly said, these things aren't happening in my jail. Yet we have a video from a young man named Marquise Norwood that shows a brutal beating of him. I don't know how many of your audience knows about what happened in Marcy to Robert Brooks, but that beating that Marquise Norwood endured was one punch away from being another Robert Brooks. We have spoken to the county legislatures and asked them to do some sort of oversight on that jail. That jail can no longer continue to police itself. And when we think about Black August and we think about the fight, we're also thinking about the bodies that are getting beat in there. Overwhelmingly, they're Black bodies. And so we pleaded to the Black caucus of the Albany County Legislature. Need to be honest and say, to this day, we started sending them emails in early February. Carolyn McLaughlin, who is the chair of the Black Caucus, has not once replied to one of our emails. I've had side conversations with the deputy chair of the Albany County Legislator, Wanda Willingham, who has repeatedly asked me for a list of names of people to come meet with them and have a conversation with them. She said she didn't want a long list, to condense the list. So I gave her the list. I've given her the list about 3 times. She's never had that meeting with us. We show up every second Monday of the month since February to their public forum, and we lay out. Several of us show up, and we're now getting people who weren't even part of the core group of us that just show up with us to go speak. We've had family members come and speak, but they're not doing anything. They're really not doing anything. And the saddest part of it is they went to that jail. The Black Caucus went to the jail, not Carolyn McLaughlin. She did not go. But Wanda Willingham went. And I would not say her name now, but she said it at the last public forum that it was her that went to that jail. And because of the horrific conditions in there, she got ill and had to leave. So she left the tour of the jail early because she couldn't stomach what she was seeing. And yet we sat there last night at a public safety meeting and listened to them approve money for dogs, a shelter for dogs out at the jail, approved money for, I know I heard this right, a $66,000 stretcher. Um, they proved all this money, but not once did we hear any figures or dollars around the improvements in the jail that the county legislature saw of the horrific conditions. Nor did they ask the sheriff about the violence and the officer that was arrested and the article that came out yesterday. So he came in there, did about 3 or 4 um, line items for money that's being moved around or money to go here and there, and then left.
Because this is what we know, right? And the idea that those who are in power are going to do the things that are necessary or that are just or that are right, we know that's not the case. Like, it's why we always have to demand justice, because we don't get it just because we hope people do the right thing, whether it's the allocation of funds or how the policies and practices show up. Um, and I want to take it back for a minute, because when we do talk about abolition, we're talking about like policies and practices and institutions. And as you had already mentioned, our jails and prisons have always been a problem. They've never been about rehabilitation. They've
Mhm.
never been about justice. It's about a pound of flesh. It's about punishment. So it's not built in a way that if someone needs to learn better, to do better, or they need some other supports, especially those individuals that are incarcerated that are battling addiction, that's not a place of healing. That's not a place of wellness. So
Right,
when we're talking about like what we're going to do with jails and prisons, nothing about it is meant to make us whole. It's
right,
just punishment. And when we remove our community members, like this idea of, oh, we're safe and we're going to end crime because we removed a person who caused harm, you didn't repair harm, you removed the person. And so we have these holes we're trying to fill, and instead of addressing harm, they're going to do things like paint over the mold inside the jail. Or they're going to say, we charged this one officer with a misdemeanor, so we don't need an oversight committee. We don't need
right.
a civilian review board. We took care of one person. And correct me if I'm wrong, isn't it a black man that they're
Yes,
charging? But not the white men that stomped the hell out of Marquise.
none of them.
Not a
And
single.
what we became aware of is, in order for the district attorney's office to do their job, the jail has to do their investigation and then turn this stuff over to the district attorney. So the jail has yet to turn over any investigation to prompt any type of charges against the gang of correctional officers that brutally beat Marquise Norwood. If anyone hasn't seen the video, there is maybe about 6 or 7 officers who are actually beating him, but then maybe like 6 or 7 more come and start standing, almost giving a wall so that you can no longer see what's happening to him. But I do believe there's litigation going on about that. So at this time, Marquise himself cannot speak out about it, but he did give permission for his video to be shared. I also want to say that we are hopeful, and there's a way that we can try to tackle some of this, and it is by legislation, right? And so we're working with um, Senator Salazar's office and Assemblymember Gabriel Romero's office for legislation that will hopefully have counties, or mandate that counties have civilian oversight review boards. The other good news is that the Corrections Commission um, which is currently 3 people. Two are law enforcement, one a former sheriff, and one a former officer, I believe, from Rikers, and the other one formerly worked at Osborne Association. Um, they passed legislation last session to extend the corrections commission to 9 people instead of 3. My understanding is that there'll be attorneys, a formerly incarcerated person, community organization representatives on the new commission. So hopefully we can get that going, that they start to build on that, because currently you cannot rely on a former sheriff to investigate a sheriff. That's not going to happen. And
No.
so we have, when I tell you we have gone up the chain, we've tried working with Sheriff Apple initially, and we have audio of him. Initially, he admitted he has a problem in that jail. Initially, he admitted that he felt that an oversight review board might be a good thing. But then his ego got in the way when we went back to the county legislature, because we kept getting calls,
Yeah.
and we went back on the mic saying something needs to be done. So his ego got in the way, and that's when he started calling us disingenuous and full of crap. Well, I say that Sheriff Apple is disingenuous and full of crap. But I need to also be transparent here. If you would have said this to me, you had to talk to me, let's say in December of 2024, about Sheriff Apple, I would have been so pro Sheriff Apple. I would have been so team Sheriff Apple, because the things that I worked on him with, the community stuff that I did, he was absolutely 110% there for. See, I think the problem was Sheriff Apple really didn't understand what I did for my day job. So he dealt with me working on a Halloween event I give here,
Mhm.
or giving out um a mask and hand sanitizer
Uh-huh.
during COVID. So he
Right.
worked with me, or making sure the lady in Colony stops taking my Amazon packages because our addresses are similar. So he worked with me on those things, but
Yeah.
he never really tackled me when it came to my advocacy for incarcerated people. So now he has, and now we have come to, we are no longer friendly. We are definitely on opposite sides of the coin. And Sheriff Apple needs to understand that Freedom Unshackle will not stop. The NAACP will not stop. The Urban League will not stop. The Center of Law and Justice will not stop. A Village, Bridge the Gap, the Council of Churches, all of us, releasing agent people in prison, and every other organization that has aligned with us will not stop until we see some type of oversight happen at that correctional facility. We also are calling for the removal of Superintendent Lyons. He is a problem. He is an absolute problem. And there's part of us that we believe that Sheriff Apple doesn't even get most of the reports of the things that are happening in that jail. We don't believe he knows most of the things that are happening.
Which is still, it's still on him,
Yeah.
whether
Oh
he's
yeah.
getting support or not, right? And I got to go back to, he's going into the communities, handing out masks, he's showing up for Halloween, and that's what they do. And I get pushback all the time, because I've said over and over again, I don't give a damn if a cop gave you a bike. I don't
Right.
give a damn if the sheriff showed up for Halloween, because they still gonna beat your ass when you're in the cell. So don't come at me with the, oh, they're so nice. Yeah, because they don't want you looking behind the curtain. They don't want you questioning them about what's going on behind the wall. They want you to
You,
just
you
go, oh
know,
no, he's a nice guy. And it's like, yeah, you can be a nice guy and show up in the community, but that don't mean that the systems that you're perpetuating aren't still a problem. And I
and
think that's, they do that to us far too often.
we have more of a problem than just Sheriff Apple.
Yeah.
The Albany County Legislature is a problem. First of all, I think some of those people have been there way too long, and they're too comfortable in their jobs. They're too comfortable giving out, standing outside and making these promises. And as soon as they get in their cars and drive away, they forget. They forget all about who they just were talking to. I I was I was told going into this, be mindful of Wanda Willingham. I ignored I ignored it to a degree. I dealt with her with a long handled spoon, but she definitely was a disappointment. And now I'm looking at this like, okay, Carolyn McLaughlin has represented the South End of Albany as a common council member and now as a county legislature. The South End of Albany has not gotten better. It has deteriorated since I moved here in 2005. There's nothing about the South End that is revitalized. So why do people keep electing her back into the same position? Because she's done nothing. The nerve of her to try to run for mayor. So when we talk about Black August, we need to look at some of these Black officials and say, where are you at showing up for us? How are you showing up for us? Stop coming around handing out bread, Wanda, out of Yarborough. Hand out solutions. Hand out real-time solutions to a lot of the problems that are happening in the communities that you were supposed to be serving. And the nerve of them to block out emails, regardless of how you feel about what I'm saying about the jail and about you. I'm still a constituent. I still vote. Why is my email blocked from Albany County NY.US? That's crazy to a lot of us.
They can't. So just so you know, legally they can't. When you're an elected
But they
official,
did.
you're not supposed to be able to do that. Like that's not supposed to happen. And like, yo, so Ronnie, the thing that strikes me is sometimes folks will say, "Oh, but I went to that one meeting," as if that was it.
Right.
We're talking about a fight for freedom and a fight for liberation. Can you explain to folks how long it takes to create change and why it's important to show up all the time and not just I went once and it's over?
Right. So session for the legislature is January pretty much to like June, right? Um, you have to show up. If you see an email from us, even if it's just a body, just to be there, show up. It's not going to happen overnight. This is, you're in it for the long haul. We've been fighting for bills in the legislature now going on 4 years. You know, every session we're right back at it. We're there. I almost practically live in the Capitol between January and June. You know, but I'm actually used to this. And that's another thing that they're discounting. There's some of us that know what it takes to make change actually happen. So I am committed to the long haul. I'm not going to go away. But we need people to say, we need to come out, stay connected, stay committed, come show up, read the literature that's coming through your emails or on your social medias, check in. How can you help? Maybe as simple as making a phone call is something you can do. Calling your elected officials, even though I don't think it does much good, it still helps, right? It still helps. I think that people don't realize that for us to get what we need to be sustained and stand in solidarity with each other on a consistent basis. It's not just, oh, I met with you guys last month, so let somebody else come this month. No, we still need you next month. We still need you next week. We still need you in this fight. Because this fight is going to take a lot. They are all resisting any kind of change at Albany County Correctional Facility. It speaks volumes that we had about 7 people in January alone contact us, and we started making them aware of what was happening. And yet we just had an incident Tuesday where officers kicking someone in the head. I don't understand why Sheriff Apple can't show up at roll calls and say to those men that work there and those women who work there, don't put your hands on any incarcerated person in this facility. If you have to restrain them, get them in handcuffs. Once you get them in handcuffs, don't hit them, don't kick them, don't mace them. What are you macing and kicking a person who's already down on the ground in handcuffs? And let me also be clear about something, Jamaica, because see, people think I just talk out of one side of my mouth. I could never be a correctional officer because I understand what they go through. But when you take the job, You take the job to go through the things that you go through. There are people in there who clearly should be in a mental health facility. So yes, there might be time you get urine thrown on you or feces thrown on you, because these are people with mental health issues that maybe needed an alternative to incarceration. But this is the career that you chose. And there's nowhere, I don't believe, in your trainings that teach you to brutally beat an individual. And another thing, denying people their legal visits because you don't want their attorneys or the judges to see that you brutally beat them. So there's a lot of layers to this thing that is happening, and we are absolutely calling on the removal of Superintendent Lyons. We're absolutely calling for some sort of investigative power over the jail. The legislator has the power to create. They might not be able to create a civilian oversight review board, but they can have an investigative body with subpoena power.
And we know there's a lot that they can do, including the Civilian Police Review Board that should include incarcerated folks, formerly incarcerated people, family members, community members, um, grassroots organizations. No, I don't think a single cop should be on the review board, not a single one, because their
Absolutely
bias is
not.
just too high. But one of the things, like, we got to wrap up soon, but I don't want to miss the point where it may not be explicitly in their training, but the idea that there's an acceptability to inhumane treatment of people who are incarcerated, that it somehow is a natural consequence for being put in jail or prison, is far too common. And I saw so many comments on social media. Well, if you don't want to get beat while you're in jail, then don't commit the crime. Yo,
Right.
that's not what it is. That's not supposed to be the punishment. The punishment is being removed from your community and being in a cage. That's it. Not inhumane treatment. But there is this perception. And I think again, we're talking about policies and practices and culture and institutions. And the belief is, even if it's not explicitly said, is that those people, if they're incarcerated, they are less than, and they don't get the same treatment as anybody else. And so we've got to keep fighting. We've got to keep showing up to city council meetings, to county council meetings, protests outside of jails and prisons, making phone calls, writing emails, posting on social media, and we can't stop. We've been fighting since 1619, and we
Right.
only got to where we are because we've been fighting this long. So we've got to keep fighting. And I'm proud to stand next to you every single day, Ronnie. Every
Thank
day.
you. I'm
All you
proud to
got to
stand
do
next to
is
you too.
call me up, let me know,
I
and
know.
we gonna get it.
You and Sean come through.
We
I
gonna
just
get
want to say
through.
before we go is that
Yeah.
I didn't mention Joanne Cunningham's name, who is the actually chair. She's the alleged chair of the Albany County Legislature, but everyone knows that it's Wanda Willingham right now who is calling the shots, and everyone knows that. It's a shame though, because as much as we reached out to those people, I need to say I think the previous leadership under Andrew Joyce, I really believe that Andrew Joyce, whether we would have liked what he said or not, that he would have met with us. You know, you can't have, I mean, to call an organization like the NAACP or the Urban League full of crap, because that's what Sheriff Apple said, that we are full of crap. So you called the NAACP full of crap, the Urban League full of crap, the Council of Churches full of crap. I just want to point out to people who might be listening what other organizations are involved in this that Sheriff Apple is calling full of crap. And I just want to point out that I think that the Sheriff's Department and the Albany County Legislature, they are disingenuous and they are full of crap.
And I'm glad that you did that, because it also shows the broad coalition and collective of individuals that have come together on this one issue. It's not just like a single group of people. There's a whole bunch of different folks that are coming together. We're going to continue this conversation. We're going to continue the fight. If you are not already on the email list for Freedom Unshackled Coalition or for all of us, please reach out. We will find a way to get you involved and make sure you know what's going on. Roni, I couldn't think of a better way to end Black August than to have this conversation with you.
Thank you. Thank you for
Listen,
having me. For real, this was cool.
this was cool. So we're gonna find some other times to have conversations, but we're gonna take the vibes out, right? We're gonna continue with the singing guitar vibes because as fired up as we get, we're gonna be chill. We're gonna take this energy, we're gonna build our communities, we're gonna support each other. And Black August is always Black August, y'all. Don't think that it ends on August 31st, because it doesn't. This fight continues, and we'll talk to y'all real soon. I appreciate you, Roni.
Thank you.